Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today is going to be a continuation of my Beauty Rewind series, and we're going to be focusing on the best and worst powders of this past year. I am a huge fan of makeup powders. I think they just set your makeup beautifully and they also give you a perfect finish, especially if you're going to put it on top of any liquid products. This video is going to combine a couple of different powders. So we are going to be talking about the best and worst loose powders, the best and worst pressed powders, and I'm also going to throw bronzers in here just because I don't have that many to talk about. As I do with all of my Beauty Rewind videos, I am going to put a disclaimer on this to say, take everything I say with a grain of salt. Sometimes what works for me may not work for you and vice versa. I'm just sharing with you my experiences with the products that I'm going to be talking about today. And again, before I dive into all of the products, I'm going to let you know a couple of things, in particular what type of skin I have and what I look for in a powder. I primarily have an oily skin type, but in the winter I can veer towards combination, which basically means the perimeter of my face gets a little bit dry, whereas the interior or my T-zone stays oily. I have enlarged pores, I deal with rosacea in this particular area here, I have acne scarring, and I do deal with a little bit of texture on my cheeks in particular. So as you can see, I've got a few things that are going on, and when it comes to a powder product, I always look for something that is going to be mattifying and that is going to cement my makeup into place. When it comes to a loose powder, I do like something that will help hide and conceal my pores and something that isn't going to look too cakey on my face. I need it to just set everything in place beautifully, and if it can include a little bit of extra coverage, then I'm all about that. The same goes for a pressed powder. I do like it to be mattifying, I like it to include a little more coverage, and it needs to blend out seamlessly. I don't want any powders grabbing onto any of my dry patches or accentuate any of the texture that I've got going on. And for bronzers in particular, I do like a very light flush of color. I don't like bronzers that are very pigmented. I find those to be a little more difficult to work with, especially for my light-ish skin tone. I do like a matte bronzer primarily. On the very rare occasion, I will use something that has a little more luminosity or sparkle in it, although I'm not a huge fan of most of those formulas on the market. I do have one cream bronzer that I'm going to be talking about, and this was a surprise for me. I didn't think I was going to like it as much as I did, but that is going to be included in this video as well. Now that I've got all of that out of the way, let's dive into the best and worst loose powders. I don't think I have any brand new powders from this past year that I'm going to be talking about. These are a few years old, or maybe older than a few years. Basically, they've been on the market for a while, but there is one powder that is new to me from this past year, and it is this one here from Kevyn Aucoin. This is the Gossamer Loose Powder, and this one here was a huge surprise for me. I did manage to find it in Winners. Winners is the Canadian equivalent of Marshalls or TJ Maxx in the US. So if you ever hear me talk about Winners, I'm referring to TJ Maxx essentially. And I happened to find this powder on the shelves at Winners, and I was so surprised. I'm like, hold on a second, a Kevyn Aucoin product there? Damn. I looked up reviews of this loose powder and I was surprised to see how many people loved it. So I figured I'm going to invest and see what all the hoopla is about. And man, was I pleasantly surprised with this sucker. The packaging is stunning. It's a beautiful compact. When you crack it open, this little powder puff kind of sits over there. You can take that off, lift the center, I guess, component, and then you do have this plastic layer that has different perforations in it, and you can, I don't know, if you can see that clearly on camera, but if you gently tap in a brush or a sponge, a lot of product is going to disperse, and then you can go ahead and start putting it on your face. What I love most about this powder is how finely milled it is. When it goes on my skin, it goes on flawlessly. It doesn't grab dry patches, it doesn't accentuate my texture, it doesn't make me look scaly, especially around my nose. It doesn't really have any extra coverage, but it does do an amazing job of setting your face, and it is going to look so so freaking smooth. It is a little bit on the expensive side if you're going to be picking it up from a Sephora or the Kevyn Aucoin website, but if you are able to find this at a TJ Maxx or a Winners, I would highly recommend you pick it up. It is a standout powder for me, and I'm definitely happy I got my hands on it. Another loose powder that is a staple in my collection, it is the Coty Airspun powder. This is such a fantastic loose powder. It is incredibly affordable. I do primarily use the one that is labeled translucent extra coverage because it does provide a little bit of extra coverage. This container has a crap ton of powder in it, so it is going to last you a long time. So if you are somebody who really likes to bake your face and cement your makeup into place, then I would highly recommend you pick up this particular powder just because you're going to get more bang for your buck. A Kevyn Aucoin powder isn't going to have as much product in it, and you'll probably go through this a lot faster than you would something like this. What I love about this powder is just how flawlessly it goes on, especially around my under eye area. If I'm pressing this in, it is going to mask all of my pores and give me such a smooth canvas. The only downside to this particular powder, and I'm sure everybody and their grandmother has already talked about this, is the scent. Oh God, it smells like grandma's perfume or grandma's house that's been fumigated in like a floral baby powder. That is the best way I can describe this scent. If fragrance does not bother you, this powder is freaking awesome. The last loose powder I'm going to talk about is a favorite of mine. You guys have probably seen this in a ton of my old videos. It is the Rimmel Stay Matte Loose Powder. This here is a godsend. You can get it for around $6 or $7 at the drugstore, and I love how mattifying this particular powder is. I do have a new container because I ran out of my old one, but it does come with a little powder poof. You've got quite a bit of product in here, and for me, I can usually get about 4 or 5 months of wear out of one of these little tubs here. This is a very finely milled powder, which again, I enjoy. Just like the name suggests, it is meant to keep you matte throughout the day. I take this powder on all of my vacations because I know I'm gonna be a sweaty, hot, oily mess by the end of the day, and this powder here gives me the best chance at having a good makeup day. I absolutely love it. Those are my 3 best loose powders for this past year. Moving on to press powders. The first one I'm going to talk about comes from CoverGirl. This is the Vitalist Healthy Foundation Powder. This here is such an amazing powder. You can see I have hit pan, and I'm using this very sparingly because my Walmart is always sold out of this powder, and I think it's because it's that friggin' good. I kid you not, this powder is a dupe for the MAC Studio Fix powder. This is going to give you great additional coverage. It's going to go on your skin nice and smooth. This doesn't cling to any of my dry patches at least, and I find it does a great job of sealing in my makeup. The other powder that I really enjoy from the drugstore is this one here from Physicians Formula. Just like the Healthy Foundation, I love this healthy powder. Oh my goodness. It is great for adding a little bit of extra coverage, so it's not going to give you full coverage like the CoverGirl powder, but this is going to give you a nice wash of color on top of your foundation. It is going to help seal in all of your liquids that you have put on your face, but this powder is not meant to be mattifying. Let me be clear. This is just meant to set your foundation. I still like it because it gives my face a very nice, healthy glow to it. And as of late, I have seen this in Winners, and I was able to pick up a couple of backups for $5.99 each. And normally at the drugstore, this powder, at least in Canada, runs for about $18 or $19. So it is a little bit on the higher end side. It is Physicians Formula, but man, solid powder. Another OG powder that has never steered me wrong is this one here from MAC. This is the Studio Fix powder. I am such a fan of this, and the amount of product you get in here is insane. This product is spectacular. You can use this on its own straight up as a foundation, and you can just buff in the powder and kind of even out your complexion, or you can use it on top of your foundation to set everything in and also give yourself myself a little bit of extra coverage. It sets my makeup in place, doesn't cling to my dry patches, and it doesn't accentuate my texture, which is something else I really appreciate about that powder. But this also keeps my face looking matte throughout the day. If I ever need to touch up, I just grab this compact, I quickly wipe away the oils, add a little more powder on top, and I am good to go. It is such a stellar product. I cannot recommend it enough. And the last pressed powder that I'm going to talk about as being one of the best powders of the year is this one here from Hourglass. This is the Ambient Lighting Powder in the shade Dim Light. Holy crapola. I don't know why I was sleeping on this powder. I remember watching a video that Tati did, I don't know, a few months ago now, and she said she uses this powder to set her face and it gives her a beautiful, healthy glow. And so I've started doing this recently. I have been using just this powder because I want to see how it's going to work with all of my different foundations to set everything that I've put on my face. And man, does it give me such a beautiful glow from within. It doesn't add any extra coverage, so let me be clear about that, but it does have such a beautiful, smooth texture to it. And the pearls in here are just so fine. Like, this is a baked powder, so the formulation isn't going to be the same as the MAC Studio Fix powder, for example. But oh my goodness, when this goes on your skin, it's gonna give you such an incredible, healthy glow. You are going to love it. And this is coming from somebody who has extremely oily skin. This powder just wears really well. So it doesn't keep you matte by any means. I would certainly double powder. So use this in areas where you need to stay matte, and then use this pretty much everywhere else. But in the winter time, this has been looking so good on my skin. And now I'm going to talk about the worst powder of the year for me. And I don't want to say it's the worst powder of all time, because I know some people are die-hard obsessed with this powder and it looks phenomenal on them. And other people might agree with me and say it's really not that great. And the powder I'm talking about is the La Mer Sheer Pressed Powder. It is a powder that I bought when it was on sale during the Sephora sale this past fall or winter. I think it was in November, whatever you want to call that season. It felt like winter in Canada, that's all I'm gonna say. I bought the powder when it was on sale because I didn't want to spend the full amount. It is a very expensive powder, but I do know it has really great skincare ingredients embedded in the formulation. The first time the powder arrived on my doorstep, it looked a little bit funny. The package had already been opened and it looked like it already had hard pan in it, which turned me off completely. I have been dipping into it for the last week and a bit, and I've noticed that I'm getting a little bit of hard pan on the powder, and I really wasn't expecting that. None of my other powders do this, and I'm not sure why I'm getting that effect here. I emailed the Sephora customer service team, let them know, and they said no problem, send it back, we'll send you a brand new one, which is exactly what I did. I sent back the old powder and they sent me a new one. And I played around with it for several weeks, and I found it didn't really do anything for my skin the way it did great things for others. I know a lot of people who have bought it in the shade translucent, like my friend Nicole from Nicole Chantal. She has it in translucent, and every time this girl uses the powder on her skin, she looks freaking incredible. Flawless, airbrushed. Oh my god. But because I already have a lot of translucent powders, I wanted to get something with a little bit of extra coverage in it. So I got the light color. And I don't think the colored powders do anything for anyone. I didn't feel like I got any benefit from skincare ingredients. I actually noticed that the powder would cling to a lot of the texture and dry patches that I had underneath my eyes. It would actually accentuate some of the scaliness that I had on my nose. And that's something I wasn't prepared for when I would spend over $100 on that particular product. I thought I was gonna get something a little bit better, you know what I mean? Unfortunately, I had to return the powder to Sephora. I got my money back. It just wasn't a powder that worked out for me. If that happens to be a powder you absolutely love, I am very happy for you. But for me, it just didn't look good on my skin, and I also have a really hard time justifying the price tag of that powder. It's not one that I would ever spend money on again. And that's it for the worst of pressed powders. La Mer was the only one that I did not like this past year. Let's move on to bronzers, which is the last set of powders that I am going to talk about. The first and probably only bronzer that I will live and die by is this one here from Marc Jacobs. This is the Omega bronzer. I have it in the shade Tantastic or 104. Oh my goodness. This powder has changed my bronzer game. I love how this applies to my skin. This powder has such a light flush of color and it is buildable, which is something else that I love. You get a ton of product in here. I've had this compact for almost a year now. It's been that long and I've got a nice sort of dent in it, but I haven't hit pan yet. And if I'm looking at the back, there's 25 grams of product in here. So you actually get quite a bit of product, and that's why I think the price tag is where it's at. Is it worth purchasing this? Absolutely. I will continue to spend my money on this bronzer when I finish this particular compact because I think it just sits so beautifully. It is matte, it doesn't budge, it doesn't look streaky or muddy by any means. It blends beautifully with all of my blushes. This is such a staple for me when it comes to bronzers. The other bronzer that has been a surprise hit for me this past year is this one here from Maybelline. This is the City Bronzer. I bought this one here, which is in the shade 100, and then I also got the medium skin tone, I guess, and that's in the shade 200, so it's this one here. And as you can see, they look pretty similar. I have yet to dive into the 200. I feel like that's definitely going to be a good summer bronzer, but I have been working with this one here, which is the shade 100, and I love how this looks on the skin. It blends out beautifully, it is nice and matte, and it gives you a great flush of color. And both of these are available at the drugstore for a really, really good price point. So if you're looking for a bronzer at the drugstore, I highly recommend the City Bronzers from Maybelline. And the last great bronzer of this past year is gonna go to Huda Beauty. This is the Tantour Contour and Bronzer Cream. I was so hesitant at first to try this cream product because I wasn't sure that it was gonna blend out really well on my skin. I didn't know how it was gonna sit on top of my foundation, if it was actually gonna screw up my foundation, or if it was gonna sit really well. But after I watched Wayne Goss's review of these particular products, I was so impressed. He showed me how to work with a cream contour and how well it blended into the skin. Now you do have to take your time when you are working with a product like this, so if you are in a rush, stick with powders. I think that's going to take you a lot farther and be a lot easier to work with. If you are a little more advanced when it comes to your makeup skills, or you have a little more time in the morning or whenever it is you're doing your makeup, then certainly go ahead and invest in this cream product. It really is wonderful. I don't use this on a regular basis, but I do use this when I'm doing more special occasion makeup. And the way I've learned to use this contour product is to put it underneath my foundation. And so that's how I've been using this particular product. I put it underneath and I use very, very little of it. I'm just gonna show you. I'm gonna take a little bit with my finger here, and on the back of my hand, I'm just gonna show you how easily this blends out. It's very, very easy to work with. And as you can see, I used such a little amount of product, but I got a ton of color. And when it actually sets, it feels like a powder finish. It doesn't necessarily feel like a cream product. And similarly to my loose powders, I actually don't have a bad bronzer to talk about this time around. Everything that I have worked with so far has been great. But to be fair, I also haven't experimented with a lot of different bronzers. I kind of gravitate towards what I like, and I stick with that product. And honestly, this is the product that I'm gonna use on a regular basis. So if I know I really like this bronzer, I don't wanna go ahead and spend extra money just for the sake of trying something else. And that's gonna do it for my best and worst of powders for this past year. I'm now gonna turn the floor over to you and ask you the question, what have been some of your best loose powders, pressed powders, and bronzers this past year? What are your staples and what didn't work out for you? Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Before you click out of it, you know the drill. Give the video a big thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my upcoming Beauty Rewind videos. If you want to keep up with me outside of YouTube, you can always do that by following me on all of my social media, which I'm going to link for you in the description box below. Thank you again so much for watching. I hope you are all having an amazing day no matter where you are in the world. Stay beautiful, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!